The History of Israel, Part 4. Finally, we have reached the moment. The moment. It's 1947. Many Jews and Arabs migrated to Israel in the last century, and the British, who did everything in their power to make the two sides hate each other, ended up with everyone hating them. So they gave up and handed over the mandate to the UN, which sent a special committee to observe and interview all the players involved in order to find a solution to both sides. The Arabs, as usual, boycotted the committee. 3 months later, 3 solutions were proposed. 1. To establish one state with an Arab majority. Nobody voted in favor of this option because everyone knew very clearly that an Arab majority means the complete annihilation of the Jewish minority, a few years after 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. So this option was deemed unjust. The second option was to establish a federation. Even though the delegates from India, Iran and Yugoslavia voted in favor of it, this was the minority vote, and this option was deemed unworkable. Which leaves us with the third and final option, a partition plan, splitting the land to a Jewish state in about 55% of the land, Arab state in 45%, and a small international zone that includes Jerusalem and Bethlehem. The Arabs, as usual, refused. Today, some people complain on behalf of the Arabs. Why should they get only 45% of the land when they are 65% of the population? To those people, I say a couple of things. First of all, the Arabs also refused the partition plan of the Peel Commission, which gave them 80% of the land. The Arabs said very clearly that they reject any idea that involves a Jewish state, no matter how big or small it is. By the way, a third of the proposed Jewish state was the Negev Desert, which was inhospitable and pretty much worthless at the time. And when the Peel Commission suggested that the Arabs get the desert, the Arabs complained about it as usual. Now the Jews get it, and the Arabs still complain. Second of all, you have to realize that in 1947, the Arabs in Israel were politically weak, very weak, and that probably affected the partition plan. And why were the Arabs politically weak? Because A, since 1929, they were rebelling against the British and they lost. B, many of them joined the Nazi side during World War II, and again, they lost. And C, which is a major factor, while the Arabs in Israel were rebelling and complaining since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Jews in Israel were building. The Jews developed their economy, health system, political agencies. They built everything with their bare hands. While the Arabs in Israel were focused on the Jews were focused on themselves. They were preparing for a state, whether or not they would get it. And when they did get it, they were ready, unlike the Arabs. These differences played a role in the UN's decision. 3 months later, on the 29th of November 1947, the UN voted on the partition plan, aka Resolution 181.
Saudi Arabia? No. Soviet Union? Yes. United Kingdom? Abstain?
33 countries voted in favor of the decision, all 13 Muslim countries voted against it, and 10 countries abstained, including Great Britain. The partition of Israel has been officially approved, and the Jews began celebrating and dancing in the streets. They didn't have much time to dance though, because a few hours later, on the morning right after, the Arabs in Israel launched massive attacks against Jews all over the land. This part of the war ended 6 months later with the Jewish victory in May 14, 1948. Once again, the Arabs started a war, and once again, they lost. And that is not a huge surprise, because in 1947, 1948, the Arabs in Israel were not only politically weak, they were also weak from a military point of view. You see, for the past 20 years, the Arabs were fighting the British, and they lost, while the Jews were fighting the Nazis, and they won. And those who survived came back to Israel with military experience, and that proved to be crucial. But the Jews did not win the war yet, because on May 14, 1948, the British officially left. The mandate was officially over, and the Jewish leader David Ben-Gurion officially announced the formation of the State of Israel, in accordance with the UN's decision. And once again, it didn't take much time for the Arabs to respond, and on the following day, the armies of Syria, Iraq, Egypt and Jordan launched a full-scale attack and crossed the border into Israel with the intention of killing every Jew and eradicating the Jewish country that was exactly 1 day old. 3 years after the Holocaust, once again the Jews find themselves in a war for the right to exist. The results and aftermath of this war in Part 5.